Imagine a gender-equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge women's equality. Collectively, we can all break the bias. Ladies and gentlemen, what I just quoted is the International Women's Day 2022 theme. It is indeed a pity that in 2022, we are still negotiating a gender equal world. Well, I guess it is what it is. And now let's move on to facts. Data compiled over 194 countries by the Center for Economic Policy Research and the World Economic Forum in January 2022 indicated that women leaders are clearly reacting more quickly and decisively in the face of potential fatalities, with the country suffering half as many deaths on average as those led by men. And here I'm referring to the pandemic. And yet, women are still perceived to be less suitable to lead than men. Since childhood, gender norms create social roles and expectations of how men and women should behave. Beliefs about leadership by default are formed out of traditional stereotypes that pivot around masculine behavior, and these beliefs are then used to make judgments about women at work. It's not just about the face of leadership at work, which is the question. It is a struggle for women to make the society understand that they are not bound by roles forced upon them since time immemorial. The fight for equality and respect has been a never-ending tussle for women. It is only in the 21st century that women have finally come forward and are speaking up, and the world is taking notice. Perhaps the future holds a much brighter spot for all of us. But how soon that future will come is still a question. A big hello and a very warm welcome to Brand Equity. With me, Sonali Krishna. As we mark International Women's Day, it is important to sit back and take an objective view of how far we've come and how far we need to go. And with that, I have the pleasure of 4 women who have broken barriers in different ways, inspiring the sisterhood to dream and walk the talk. Without further ado, let me introduce to you my power panel. First up, Vandana Luthra, founder and co-chairperson, VLCC Group; Sairee Chahal, founder and CEO, SHEROES; Sukhleen Aneja, CEO, Goodglamm brand; and last but not the least, Julia Izmalkowa, founder Izmalkowa, the first agency specializing in ethnographic research for marketing and business. Thank you so much, women. Truly a pleasure having you on this very special day. I want to start with you, Vandana. Yes. Your journey has started much before all these women. You also started your journey at a time where women didn't really speak out. We weren't talking about, gender equal roles. We weren't talking about pay parities. We weren't talking about any of the nuanced terms we're using today. I want to know, when you started your journey as an entrepreneur, as a woman, which was unheard of those days, what were your big obstacles and how far have those obstacles been eradicated when we talk about today's day and age in the 21st century?
So when I started, I had no money. I didn't know what to do. I went to the bank. Nobody was ready to give me any money. I couldn't get a place. I couldn't lease out a place because, they thought, what kind of a business is this? So there were a lot of apprehensions that people had. And my family too. I was married. I got married into a family which sort of totally disagreed, but my husband definitely supported me. And that was a condition I had with him. Look, I'm not going to get married if I'm not going to work. So I was a young mother, very challenging with 2 small children at home. I had to look after my home. I had to look after my place of work. I had to do so much. And there were so many hurdles that were coming my way, which were becoming more and more difficult. But I never gave up. And finally, when I started VLCC, it was, I think the concept somehow worked because women had just started to work and obesity was at a rise. So I think it was a lucky moment, a lucky time for me. And it was the best time to probably start work. So got a fantastic response and then never looked back.
Sure. Hats off to you. let me, do a deep dive on women issues broadly, and no better person to talk about it than you, Sairee. For the uninitiated, Sairee runs SHEROES. It's a woman-only social platform, and she's the best person to give us a sense of how much we've actually moved the needle, and how many miles we have to walk or run before we sleep. Sairee, over to you.
Absolutely. Look, I think International Women's Day is actually about women's rights. And the reason we celebrate the day is because we still have a long way to go. I think both as a country in India, but globally, I think women are still unequal in terms of economic rights, social rights, political rights. When you look at overall numbers, globally, women still raise less than 5% of global capital. Gender pay gap is still massive, both in India and the developing world. We still have less than 5% women who are CEOs of large corporations. Less than 2% of venture funding goes to women. So the tables are still very unequal. The good all the fundamental work the legends did before us was they gave us a base to work on. I think today we're able to get into very specific problems and talk about them, whether they are women in STEM or women in politics. We know India is yet to pass the parliament law for equal representation of women, but at least we've got a work cut out. A lot of progress that we've made, but nowhere near done. And I think the important thing to reflect on at this point in time is that this is the time to make sure we don't forget the why of the women's movement. I know there's a lot of conversation around Women's Day, but it's fundamentally important to remember why we do what we do. And I think all of this needs to fundamentally help increase women's contribution to the GDP, make sure they are financially and socially included in every way, and women across stratas and not just women in a particular segment.
Thank you for that perspective. Much required. Sukhleen, I've got diverse women here with different experiences. Sukhleen has been a high-powered executive, super successful at Reckitt Benckiser, one of the top marketers of the country. She's just had twins and took a sabbatical and now is joined as CEO of the Goodglamm Brands Group, which is a startup. So outstanding for a new mother to have taken such a interesting role, and for her to be employable, as somebody betting on her to become a CEO as a new mother is also, I think, progress. Having said that, Sukhleen, you'd be the best person to tell me, having done, years of service in a large corporation, and the fact that now you're running a startup. I would have to say that not many women would be like you, or would have the guts to decide to be a mother, in your 40s, and also then become, along with that, take up a new, rosy, challenging assignment. Very few and far between. What are the challenges that are stopping us from taking that route even today, when this dialogue has been going on almost for the last 10 years?
Very specifically, I would say these are all choices, right? Today, one needs to, even as a woman or a man, men have done it consistently, but I would honestly urge the women to unapologetically embrace ambition, right? Mm-hmm. You've been raised with great education, loving what you do, doing well, enjoying your work. It's absolutely something that we all cherish. And one shouldn't be apologetic about it, because you have contrarian forces like biological clocks ticking that is weighing you down. Today, I think science has progressed enough for us to be able to make choices, and choices that work for you as a couple. So to be able to embrace motherhood a bit later does allow for just having much more maturity and stability in your life that can just be able to help you juggle the many balls, right? So even at work, when you see young moms, sometimes it is overwhelming. And the reason why it's overwhelming is because you yourself are on a growth path, right? And then you are stretched in all assignments in life. So I think one of the things which I must confess actually was a blessing of God. During COVID, the whole maternity for me actually came through with not that much expectation of commute. one variable that you take away from life actually makes your overall life so much easier, right? So I think to that extent, as a mom of twins today, one of the things that I must say is that what made it easy or tough to make a choice was just to simply say, okay, if I can make my locational flexibility work for me, would I still be able to contribute and work in a way where I can do my best, right? And I think the more conversations we're actually having with women at senior leadership, we can try and understand what can be an unlock for them.
Julia, for people who don't know her, is a psychologist. She runs, an agency which does a lot of ethnographics. She's a traveling CEO. She's a motivational speaker. She has a deep insight into the psychology of lies. So, Julia, my question to you is: since you've traveled so much and you've interacted with so many CEOs, men and women, and different people in power, do you find that stereotyping more with us, and hence we trying to fit into a frame, and also trying to assuage the male ego and the male insecurity when a woman is in power?
I completely do not feel that. And what's more, research completely does not support this idea. Research all over the world shows that it's actually more women do not like to work with women than men work with women, because it's women who perceive women bosses as more aggressive, not men. So from my perspective as a researcher, it's women are way more privileged right now than a man, because from corporation, it's way more difficult to fire a woman right now, because women are making everything now around gender. You fire women because she does not work well, she's going to say it's because I was a woman. Whatever happens, she can always play a woman card. And this is exceptionally not good for women, because then if you have a choice to hire somebody who's not going to make any problem, who you can communicate, or somebody who's going to blackmail you, who would you hire? So I believe that we stop already fighting for equality. We start fighting for privileges. Data confirms that after, unfortunately, between 30 and 40, women give birth to the babies and decide to just to change their career. They choose to less engage at work, which we do not see this change in man's life. That's how we can explain why there is more men on CEO's position. Because when you hire a CEO is completely responsible for all company. Like Vandana knows the best. Like when you have a huge company, you cannot say that somebody, today I cannot. Like you need to make sure that all your team is taken care of. And it's more often man than a woman say, well, you're not going to even feel my personal life, because they do not talk about personal life. They don't make it about being a father or being a man. They just make the shit done. And that's why I believe we should stop talk much about gender. We should talk about our ambition, about our competence, and what we need. If we need more time, if we need more flexible time, let's talk about this. Let's fight for this. But let's not make everything about gender.
I am sure there are several women on this panel who disagree with you. And, yesterday I saw a fantastic post which said that what is diversity? Diversity is being invited to the party. What is inclusion? Inclusion is being asked to dance. I think that summed it up quite well. And I'm sure women want to respond to you on this panel. It's by no particular order. Who would like to, who has a contra opinion or agrees with us? Sure, Sairee.
All right. So, look, I think we all are entitled to our opinion, but let's not change facts. I think I did think that was a little bit of low empathy. I think the socioeconomic strata of the women we're talking about is massively different. They're not women in this room. They probably will never be in this room. And secondly, I think a lot of workplace constructs and lot of workplace dynamics are still very patriarchal. Those rules were decided by men. Those workplaces were by men. And we continue to carry that baggage. We continue to carry the colonial, the patriarchal colonial baggage that power resides in a certain kind of persona. Power looks like a certain kind of persona as well. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to break here. How do we make this process all more democratic, and I think we're seeing those changes in India from where we stand. For the first time in history of this country, 400 million women came online in the last 5 years. About 100 million women used a payment mechanism in the last 2 years thanks to the pandemic, but there are still a lot who still haven't gotten there. So when we say that these women are not trying hard enough or they are not making those choices, I think we are exercising our blind privilege there.
Well, if I can just add one thing, like what patriarchy we are talking about, like there's not even one thing I cannot do as a woman. I'm Ukrainian. We have right now war in Ukraine with Russia, as you probably know. So the law in Ukraine right now that women and kids escape, and who is staying in the country to fight? Men. In Ukrainian army is very special because it has 21% of women. So 80% of men are fighting, and many of them will die. 80%. I don't see women fighting for this, that they want to stay. Many men Ukrainian are just go to the country, to the Romania and Poland, leave them and come back to die. Yeah. And so what is this patriarchy? Is it patriarchy that only women are allowed to? No, it's equality would be we all allowed to leave the same place. So no, I don't agree that we have any patriarchy here.
First of all, I'm really sorry you guys have to go to war. And I think the war is inflicted upon by a sociopath, patriarchal, egoistic male. No, I'm sorry, but women run countries don't go to war. Historically,
what does it mean, patriarchy, for you? Let's start with the definition. What does it mean, patriarchy?
Let me also allow the other women to give their chime in, please. Sukhleen, Vandana, anyone with a view here?
I think we're just probably seeing perhaps just two different versions of truth. I think perhaps the world where we come from, Julia, all said and done, there are clearly unconscious biases as well, right, which hold people back. And I think the environments that we are in, there are also going to be all kinds of women, right? Sometimes some women have the courage to be able to move forward themselves, but systemically, unless we don't create an infrastructure to help and to enable women to succeed, it systemically doesn't solve for it. And I think perhaps the passion in the group here, coming from the world that we're in, I think the important thing is to realize that how do we, as a women's panel, talk about the common ground that can actually enable many more women to thrive. Because if you see a country like ours, whether you see boardrooms, you see male representation across offices, it's still largely male dominated, right? There's still far fewer women who are participating in leadership roles. And there are various reasons for it, right? Number one, there's education, for instance. If you were to compare the number of men and the number of women who are going and getting educated even at younger age, boys versus girls, there is a huge opportunity there because many, many young girls, especially when you look at in a country like India, they drop off and they're not completing their education. So unless you have the right education, you don't have chances for employment, or the shift in perspective doesn't happen where you're aware of your rights. So I think somewhere when you start looking at the context, it all boils down to the why of how are we beginning? And therefore, what are the challenges right now that are being faced by a country where the context is a bit different?
Well, and here it depends, like I said, in a country. In most of the countries in Europe, it's girls who have better education right now. Girls, not boys.
Correct, but it's not the same for us in India.
We keep harping about women empowerment, but I would say we are already very empowered. I think we should not talk about it, and we should just. Can the house run without us? Tell me. Women are empowered. Can the men manage the home? They cannot. Can men manage the family? No, they cannot. So, and I very proudly say,
why can they not? Why can they not? Because of social conditioning, right?
Absolutely. And I would very proudly say that a successful homemaker can be a successful professional or an entrepreneur as well.
I want to ask a last question to the panel before I wrap up. And that is, we've discussed realities. Different people have given different perspectives of how they look at the scenario. Having said that, I think as a sisterhood, if I had to ask this panel today, if we look within ourselves, right, and we look at it candidly and objectively, what do you think we need to take steps about to change in terms of whether it be just our confidence? Like, for instance, this is well reported that when a woman goes to ask for more money or negotiate better monies, we're always a bit reticent, because we're not taught to ask what we want. It's never taught to us. A man can go up to his boss and say, I think I'm working so much and I need a raise. And he can be articulate and firm about it. And we're still a bit hesitant. We don't go after what we want, and we may desire it, but we expect it to be given to us because that's just our conditioning. What are these small nuances in our own? We are competing with other women because there are such less seats for us. We are, there was one point made that, women are women's biggest enemies. And I think, unfortunately, that sad truth is only because there are such less spaces on the top that we're fighting to get there. So what are the small nuances that we need to internalize as women, as the sisterhood, to build change within ourselves and within our community, just as I think men as a fraternity are so much more stronger in their brotherhood than we as our sisterhood. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I would.
Vandana, yeah.
So I would very proudly say that in VLCC, we have 3,000 women working together, okay? Very empowered, very confident, very passionate, and very strong. So, and we are there. So when men say that women can't work together, I completely prove them wrong. So I would say that rather, I think women have more wisdom and they speak for themselves, at least in the environment that I am in. And it's completely different, because and that's how this organization has great values and great culture. And probably the day I started VLCC, when I became economically independent, I thought I was completely empowered. So that's how I empowered so many women, by making them economically independent, by telling them, okay, they have to fight for their rights. We cannot give in. We have to constantly fight for our rights, and we have to do it. And we don't fight. We have to explain. We have to put our point across gently. And where there's a will, there's a way, Sonali. If you really are determined and adamant to do something the way you want, nothing can stop you.
Well, my perspective is a little bit different, because I believe that we should stop talking so much about gender, because when we concentrate on the competence, because when we go into talk, we don't fight women with women, we fight with men too. Like there is, like I said, it's limited position on the top. There is no reason why would men say, welcome, I want to go, well, you get in here. So we all have to prove that we're the best, and we should stop thinking about, is it a woman? Is it not a woman? We should concentrate on our competence. And that's why I believe the most important thing that we should teach our children is confidence and concentration on their resources, what I can do, what I can deliver, how can I contribute? And then to realize that everybody else, opinions of everybody else is just a noise. Bias, they're going to be always biased because we're humans. Always are going to be biased. Even from the way you talk, how many biases was here about men? Men cannot run a family, which is literally not true, according to research. Like, not true. Biologically, they're created to run a family as much as women, except of breastfeeding and giving birth. So we're always going to have biases.
Sukhleen?
I think my concluding remarks would definitely be that change is definitely on the way. Is it enough? Probably not. We need more. And I think the only way it'll begin is if we start with ourselves. So I think in our own journeys, if we're able to just constantly fight with ourselves and not give up, that's the first step.
Okay, I'm running out of time, Sairee. Last words of wisdom and pearls of wisdom from you for all the women out there who are, daring to dream and walking the talk, just like all the women on the panel here.
We're still in the middle of a giant gender gap. We still have a lot of work to do. I think a lot of work is systemic, and things change when politics changes, things change when economics change, when business changes. And I think that's really, really important to keep in mind. In a country of 1 billion people, we still have some super startling statistics, whether it's the highest number of gender violence cases, domestic violence cases, rape cases, and of course, one of the lowest number of women in workforce. So to me, this problem is systemic. Yes, a lot of change happens at an individual level, but we can't escape our big picture. We can't escape our history. We can't escape our present. For us to walk into a future that we would all like to be part of. Today, we all acknowledge in the room that it's doubly hard for women to succeed. And I think our job is cut out that let's make it simpler for women to succeed. Let the system carry them as much as it carries the next gender. And I think that's really the task cut out.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better and concluded better. We definitely need to pay it forward. And also, we need, the male gender to also hold our hands as we walk this path of equity and equality. Thank you so much, women. Happy International Women's Day. Here's not to just this conversation stopping today, but a continued conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.